Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Ingerman, and welcome to the Shaman's Cave.
And I'm Renee Baribeau, the practical shaman, and welcome to the Shaman's Cave. Today, I'll introduce this one. It's a great topic. Beam me up, Scotty. Beam me up. So, we wanted to talk about our dimensional living and being in this dimension and of this dimension, but knowing that you've already moved to a place where you can create from a different reality. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so for myself, to try and give a sense of this, is there's a lot of online courses going on right now and a lot of books being written about multiple dimensions of reality and the multiverse. And I started exploring that 40 years ago when I first moved to New Mexico and went to my first Anasazi ruins, and I walked in and I still heard the children singing and I still smelled the food cooking. And the Anasazi who lived in the Four Corners around the year 800, um, I'm not real good with these things. They all disappeared, and scientists believe they all disappeared during dinner. And so I've been fascinated with this whole concept of how we can shift into a different consciousness and live our lives in a good, healthy, and harmonious way. And so I think for me, in since since I saw this Anasazi ruins, I think for me, I really did get focused on actually physically moving into a different, multiple reality, which the belief out there are so many different multiple realities right now, and it's true. We have people who are dealing with the fear of deportation. That's a whole nother reality. I don't live in that reality. Um, my grandparents did, they had to flee for their lives, and it was a different experience for them. Um, there's all kinds of things going on in New Mexico and in the world that I just don't know. It's not part of my world. And yet I have this incredible connection with the spirits, and they share so much about living a life of harmony and a life of love and light. And so what I have shared with Renee is that all of us who are on a spiritual path, we actually already stepped into a different reality than collective consciousness is in right now. But we're still back in the collective consciousness and how we're living our lives. And is there a way without seeing ourselves living this earth, because all these dimensions of reality going on right now, we're still on the earth. They're just separate in consciousness. They're just separate in consciousness. That's it. How do we step into a new consciousness since we already did shift into a different reality because we know that what's true is the spirits, the divine, unity, oneness, unconditional love, and that we are nature and not separate from it. So we're already living in a different reality, but how do we become the sculptors of it so that we're now bringing the beauty into it with us, and that's our job.
I for me, it's always like the checklist of how's my life looking today? I mean, it's as simple as I've been really grumpy this week, which is unusual, but I was really tired. And so, like, somebody said, "Oh, come over for a party. It's a birthday." Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a birthday and I'll come over tomorrow when I'm not so tired. I mean, it's we wanna make it very complicated, but sometimes it's really very simple. A few years ago, I was standing in the bank and I realized I was in this line, but I realized that I was in a different line than everybody else in the bank. And it was like this really cognitive awareness that even if we were going to be living in separate realities, we were sharing space. And so, how do I share space in the line? Oh, I wait my turn, I'm polite, and I do all of those things. And then I get to go home to the reality that I'm living in. But one of my bugaboos has been where people would prefer to be living outside of their bodies and in some other separate space. Like, that "beam me up, Charlie," "beam me up, Scotty" thing. It's like, I think the lot of the work that I tend to do in my groups and stuff is to get people back into their bodies and figure out which reality you're living in from there.
Absolutely, and so I believe that that's a whole new roadmap that we have to create in our lives is number 1, we have to wake up to the fact that we are not living in the same dimension of the rest of the collective. That's number 1. And instead of like, okay, there's gonna be a magic bullet where, this being is gonna come to me or, I'm gonna be beamed up or something like that. Instead of that, instead of realizing, "Whoa, I woke up. A different being did not wake me up. I woke up." So I have a power inside of me that experiences truth in a different way than the collective. I didn't have to be told that. That is incorporated in my knowledge in all the shamanic work that I've done in waking up and in shifting consciousness. And so it's more about exactly what you said, Renee. It's we have to take steps. So I think in just saying this, it's like people will immediately go, well, how do I jump through all the steps, get to the good place? And the bottom line, it's a hike through a forest, and there's no jumping. There's walking through the forest, and it's walking on a new path. It's choosing a new path. So you're actually choosing a different path away from where the collective is going with your spiritual practices and your consciousness and staying present and grounded in your body. And where does that lead you to? Just imagine.
That just helped me make sense of what I told you earlier when we were having our pre hit the record button conversation about that I had decided I was tired of being silenced on social media, and that although I don't want to necessarily express my political views, I want to express my integrity views.
Mhm.
And so, like, what are my values living in this realm that I'm living in that are of a good person? And a month or so ago, there was this man who, was calling other people stupid and ignorant and bragging about how he just got back from Mount Shasta. And I couldn't help myself but write, really, this is what the mountain told you? Does the mountain told you to call other people stupid and ignorant? Wow, that must be a different mountain than that's talking to me, because my mountain tells me that I can find something in common with each and every person who's sharing space under these trees and this air, and that I needed to do that. And I think that what we're talking about for me is about, like, when I wake up to my humanity, then I have to live by certain principles, and that makes all of those other things out there noise.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of noise right now, and that's keeping you stuck in a particular dimension.
Mhm.
And all of us stuck in a particular dimension. So what if we step outside of the noise and look at the practices that we've done? So I want to give you an example. It's going to trigger you.
Oh,
It's
good.
it's triggered me. Uh, so here we go. So there's this world of dystonia. It's a dimension. Uh, if I can choose to be in it or not in it, right now I'm in it and I'm getting a lot of lessons from it. They've been studying this brain disorder since the 1700s and they still don't know where it is or what it is. Since the 1700s. So, if you go on, if you, I've worked with alternative experts, there are two on the planet. And if you look at what is the group of people who had the best success rate healing from dystonia, it's born again Christians.
Mm,
They have the best success rate. And if you look at it, their connection is unbreakable. So their belief of God is so strong, their connection is unbreakable. It's completely unbreakable. So with that unbreakable connection, they were able to heal because they believed in the power of God so strongly, 1,000%. If you've met true born agains, it's 1,000% belief, and they healed. And that's the population that heals the easiest and the fastest.
mhm.
And so I'm bringing this up because I keep talking on the Shaman's Cave. I keep writing. I keep teaching that we're letting ourselves get distracted and that shamans had an unbreakable connection with their helping spirits 24 hours a day, not just, I'm gonna journey 10 minutes today. Their connection to their spirits was 24/7. And so if we could create, again, that kind of 24/7 connection and stop allowing us to be so distracted by the noise that you're talking about, Renee, where would that take us? How far could we walk together into a different place?
When you just said this about that this has been being studied since the 1700s, it immediately triggered something in the teachings that I do, that it was about that time when we became humans doing instead of humans being.
Mm.
And so that totally relates to this idea of those who didn't lose that connection, whereas the rest of us became into this cycle of work, 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 plateau, 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 then decline, because instead of just being in nature or being with our farm fields, we became, taxed to the cogwheels of the factories. I don't know if there's a relationship, but when you started to talk about the length of time, I'm there like, well, that is just too curious.
Yeah, no, I keep sharing that over and over and over again is, and we're not switching topics here. It's all part of the same topic of what reality are you living in right now. I have been through every nervous system program because the brain disorder I have is a nervous system issue. I've been through every brain disorder program, nervous system program that there is. I've studied, I'm a trauma therapist myself, and so I've taken so many CEUs with trauma therapists. And there's just so much that I thought that was the end of my path. That was the end. I did all these things and that was the end. But what I realized is that was just a territory for me to walk through to start getting me into the dimension of life that I wanted to start creating for myself.
Mm.
Wasn't the end, and I mistakenly thought it was the end, but it was just another doorway to give me more wisdom about, okay, I've shifted into a new consciousness. And now, how do I design my life in a different way to live in the dimension of reality that I want to be living in right now? And so we find these stepping stones that take us into a different dimension, into another consciousness. But a lot of us feel that that was supposed to bring us there.
Mhm.
Wasn't supposed to bring us there, it was just one of the bridges.
Right. And if we go back to before that time when we really understood that the cycles of nature, were a cycle that had a place where there was a little jumping off place that that I look at as this little gap time. And the gap time is where we start to rebuild for the next cycle as well. And so if we could start to maybe look at these dimensions we want to be in and add our little gaps into how do we get there, but realizing for me, and this is the part that makes me the practical shaman, is that we chose to be here now in these bodies. We wanted an embodied experience. And that means our bodies break down, our bodies wear out. We have to treat our bodies with some kind of respect. You would you would not leave your you treat our we treat our animals, our cats and our dogs better than we treat our own bodies. We treat our plants better than we treat our own bodies. But we're all part of this cycle and it really is key to being able to jump dimensions is to have the best vehicle possible to do that with.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember Isis telling me a really long time ago, before I had my disorder, I was always working so much, I was tired, and she goes, "Sandra, your spirit is dragging your body around instead of your body is carrying your spirit."
Mhm. So
And
smart.
and that's what's happening to a lot of us right now, and so, again, not to lose the thread is, taking us back to if we want to be in a different dimension of reality, looking at the tiny, tiny steps of how we get there instead of trying to do a bypass.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of bypassing going on, and we don't do it. So if you're looking for the bypass teachers, it's not Sandra and it's not me because we dance with the bear, we, go through the mud, and when we come out, we're always a little bit lighter. When we hose off from that mud, there's always hope and possibility.
Yeah, and there's always a renewed resilience. There's
Mhm.
renewed energy, a renewed life force. You feel more vibrant. You feel renewed, and so it's it, it's it's a beautiful thing to stop looking at being taken away to another place, but creating it because we're being given the opportunity to do that. Um, if all of life is just energy and it's just illusion, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, just planting a seed. If everything on this planet is actually energy, which is from a physics point of view, there is no form. So, from an energetic point of view, in order to create any kind of play, role, belief that this is reality, you have to have an intention to uh, put that into the energy to create form, where actually form does not exist.
Mhm. And on that ending note, I'd like to say that at the beginning of our conversations today, I pulled a Windwalker Wisdom Oracle, because we were going into some uncharted territories, and the wind that I got was Seslana, the wind of sovereignty, and it's about that remember, even if you wanna jump to a different dimension, you always have to request with reverence, because it's the reverence that yields the power, and that was what you were saying about the born again Christians. It's that reverence, that absolute reverence, that that knowing that everything is possible through prayer, dedication, and hard work.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And to me, sovereignty means claiming your home,
Mm.
that your body is your home. This is home.
It's your snail shell, but we have some other homes too. We have the Shamans Cave over on Facebook, which has 50 some thousand followers. So that's kind of a home that you can come over and be part of. And to follow us on YouTube and anywhere you listen to your podcast, you'll find us. And share it with your friends, because there's thousands and thousands of people out there who are waking up to these realities who don't know about us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for all the beautiful work that you're doing, for listening, and for really, taking these seeds in and uh, letting what feels right grow inside of you and seeing what kind of garden blooms out of it and letting go of the seeds that just don't feel that you want them in your inner garden. It's your sovereignty to create the garden that you want. Renee and I are just having a lot of fun talking about so many different landscapes that we can work with. So, blessing, one.
Blessings.